My name is Anne Riitho, and I'm joined today by Cindy DeLeon. Cindy is a trade auditor expert with extensive experience in customs compliance and trade regulations. She's conducted numerous audits and works with clients to analyze import operations, to identify risks, and develop compliance manuals and procedures. Previously, Cindy served as a senior auditor and assistant field director of the U.S. Customs and Border Protection's Regulatory Audit Division in Chicago. And Cindy is dedicated to education, so frequently conducting workshops and seminars to share her wealth of knowledge with industry professionals, especially through her annual Advanced Topics in Customs and Compliance conference. So, Cindy, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for the invitation. And Byte participated in our last ATCC conference in Houston, so it was great to have you guys there.
Yeah, I keep telling you, I was bummed to miss it, so I'll be there next year.
Sounds good.
So before we move on to today's topic, just very quickly on Byte, we do two things. So we have our back-end AI-based trade data platform with hundreds of millions of records, and that informs our customers' analysis and drives our compliance and risk management tools. And then we also have the Byte app, which allows users to quickly look up sanctions lists, commodity control lists, cyber risks, and what we call second tier, so PEPs, beneficial ownership, and other open source data. Our app provides a repeatable process for supply chain screening and combines entity lists and commodity lists and is a quick and accurate lookup and risk management tool. So we have a number of entity and commodity lists related to forced labor compliance. And that brings us to today's topic. So, Cindy, I'm so excited to dive into forced labor compliance with you, as I know you are in the thick of it and always on the move and talking about it. So, last week you were at the CBP Summit. I understand there was a lot of talk there about upcoming changes. And so, with the anticipated expansion of the UFLPA's entity list, um, and based on what you heard at the summit, what do you think? How should companies start preparing to ensure that they're remaining compliant?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I feel like a lot of companies are still just waiting for the hat to drop, and they are just rolling the dice and wondering whether CBP is going to detain one of their shipments. And I don't encourage this at all. One of the questions that I personally asked during the summit to a panel of CBP officials and really the FLEDF, I asked the FLEDF members that were there, which is the Federal Law Enforcement Task Force, but how many entities are going to be added? And I said, is it one more? Is it 10 more? 100? 1,000? And I said, give us a sense, wake people up. And they said, um, it's more than 10. That's all they were willing to tell me. But I honestly believe in just having some of the side conversations, which is one of the biggest reasons you go to the trade summit to begin with, is some of these sidebar conversations. I really think it's going to be significantly more than 10.
Okay.
And they hired Laura Murphy, Dr. Murphy from Sheffield Hallam, and that's her goal and her mission is to get entities on the entity list. That is her whole mission and the whole reason for going there. I don't know if a lot of people know this, but her position at DHS is like a 2-year secondment. She still is, she's on a leave of absence from Sheffield Hallam. So she went there on a mission to expand the entity list. And so I really think that that's something that people need to realize and not wait to get a rude awakening with the detention notice. The other thing I would say on that topic is just that CBP expects not only that you know your supply chain. A lot of people there's a lot of talk of you need to know who all the participants are in your supply chain. You need to know where, cotton is sourced and where thread is made or where fabric is made and then where the garment is put together. It's not only that, it's not only knowing who the companies are, it's being able to trace the documentation. And one of the things that really struck me, and I kind of have my notes here, that the one of the regulatory audit people, one of my former counterparts at Customs said, you need to have a unique identifier. And what do they mean by that? They mean like batch numbers, lot numbers. Like this batch of, cotton went into this batch of thread that went into that batch of fabric, and you need to be able to trace the documentation at that level. That blows my mind. That's going to blow so many people's minds because a lot of companies are not really maintaining records at that level. One of the other things that they said during that particular panel, which was a UFLPA best practices and documentation panel, so very specific and on point, was about commingling of raw materials. So you have to understand CBP is dealing with bad actors and criminals all the time, right? And you can't sit here in the United States and think, well, my supplier gave me this information, so it must be right. Well, your supplier's supplier, or his supplier may be a really bad actor and may be dual sourcing materials from the Xinjiang region of China, but also sourcing from, let's say, another part of China, Beijing, and to be able to give you documentation upon request of Beijing raw materials when they really use Xinjiang raw materials, right? So this dual sourcing of raw materials is really important when it comes to UFLPA, when it comes to anti-dumping and countervailing duty enforcement, when it comes to free trade agreement qualification. All that becomes really important, and the management of raw materials and how it feeds into the production process is going to be really, really critical. So I'll stop there. You know me, and i could
I know.
i could go on for days. I'm passionate about this topic.
So interesting though. And the commingling and dual documentation, that's something, I think those are really good things for people to keep in mind when they're, looking back at their supply chain and just knowing that those things that people are doing that and that's really happening. It's not just, something off, that they could be doing. Like we've seen that happen. And like you mentioned, also with anti-dumping as well. So it's not just a forced labor issue.
No,
Much
not
more.
at all.
Yeah. So as you mentioned, bringing Laura Murphy over, we've heard a lot more about increased enforcement actions. Is this a trend that you've seen too? Do you expect it to continue? And in general, what do you think about, we talked about additional listings, but what do you think about the direction of UFLPA enforcement?
Sure. So I'm sure everyone who's listening to this podcast has seen CBP's UFLPA enforcement dashboard. If you haven't, I can put it up on the screen and you tell me. But if you haven't, it's something that you really should be looking at. And there are a lot of really great trade attorneys out there that are, sharing their thoughts and some of the statistics here that are put out by CBP. But if you look at this, you know, fiscal 2024 to fiscal 2022 to fiscal 2024 year to date, remember that the government's fiscal year starts October 1st and ends September 30th, just for those of you who are listening and aren't really aware. 7,000 shipments detained, 3,000 denied, 3,000 released. The rest are still pending, right? Um, and look at this, the value of shipments. You have over $300 million worth of value here. Okay. You've got shipments here that are, the majority are in the electronic sector, which most of this is solar, but it's not all solar. It really isn't anymore. There's a lot more going on, especially in the electronics sector. Apparel, footwear, textiles, industrial manufacturing materials. If you look at these sections, and we call them centers of excellence, but these industries, and you think to yourself, well, what does that mean? What is industrial manufacturing materials? What exactly does that mean? Take a look up here. There's a data dictionary. And this data dictionary is going to tell you what exactly that means. And it's very important that people take a look at that data dictionary so they know the different types of materials and tariff numbers
Mhm.
that those industries represent. As I continue going down, everyone's always interested on country of origin. And when we started looking at UFLPA, people are like, well, I don't buy from China, so why should I worry? It's like, come on, guys. Think a little bigger here. Um, the shipment was declared to customs as country of origin Malaysia. Obviously, products from Malaysia probably contain raw materials from a whole host of countries: China, Vietnam, India, Colombia. I'm Colombian. I always put a plug in for Colombia whenever I can. Um, take a look at this when I take out electronics. So I'm going to take out electronics, and everyone should go in here and just play around, and you'll see everything update. And now look, you take out electronics. Now China is the number one country of origin, followed by Vietnam. Okay. Now let's just play a little further, right? Let's look at what have you done for me lately, customs, right? What have you been doing lately? Let's just limit this to fiscal 2024, just to see, year to date. Okay. Now the vast majority is still China. When we look at this, take a look. Apparel, footwear, and textiles. Textiles is the number one industry commodity type being targeted here. Okay. And total of 822 shipments, 334 denied, 136 released, with a whole ton pending. Here they are, pending, 352 pending. So I think that if you are a high risk commodity, or your product contains raw materials that are high risk commodities, you should really be coming in here and taking a look at, the different metrics that CBP is putting out. I hope that's helpful, Anne.
Super helpful. Yeah, I agree. I think, people should be looking at this and and it goes beyond. It's interesting because it goes beyond, the necessarily like the transshipment, because it may be that it's the raw materials and it is being manufactured. So a little bit different from like an anti-dumping where, you don't have to prove that the whole product was shipped from China. It's just the raw materials. So, I think it's important to keep that in mind. And like you said, look at these chapters.
Yes, here
And
they are.
yeah.
Like industrial and manufacturing materials, primary harmonized tariff schedule chapters are right here. This covers plastics, polymers, rubber, leather, wood, blah, 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 blah. So there was a lot of misunderstanding about these statistics that were put out. Everybody's like, can you give us tariff numbers? And customs isn't going to give you probably every little tariff number, because remember, they're dealing with the bad guy. If they put a list of tariff numbers out there, the bad guy's going to use a different one. So that's why they don't do that. So these are the general categories of goods.
Yeah,
Right.
and one thing we've done on the bite team that Cindy, you actually, got us going in this direction, which we're so grateful for, is running through the harmonized tariff schedule and including HTS codes that are further along in the production line. So not just an HTS code for cotton, but cotton pants and cotton bags and anything that's made with cotton, and including that in our tool. So commodities that could be associated with forced labor. So kind of along these same lines, letting people look that up and explore that in that way. Um,
Right. Downstream. Yep.
yeah, thank you.
Of
Um,
course.
so in light of all of this and what you just talked about and looking at those indicators, it looks like obviously have your finger on the pulse of where things might be going. But in terms of overall trade compliance, looking beyond UFLPA, where do you see the future of this moving?
I think it's only going to get worse. And I think, we have an upcoming presidential election, and I don't see really CBP changing its stance on enforcement, regardless of who wins that next election. Um, as far as trade compliance goes, when Section 301 China duties came online, and all of a sudden these companies are paying 25% to import their goods from China, there was this awakening of in the US of, now your garden variety Joe that's walking down the street, he knows what a tariff is. He knows what a tariff number is. It's like, there's all kinds of little comics and things that talk about duties and tariffs and origin and all these things. And a lot of companies started staffing up, companies that never had trade compliance personnel. Then exclusions came online, and there was this rampant misuse of exclusions. ton of it. People are like, oh my gosh, this is a way of me getting my money back from all these duties. And so people started saying, oh, our tariff number is really wrong. We're just going to claim an exclusion. And customs caught wind of that. And there's a lot of audits and investigations going on, like regarding that. Now, ADCVD, that's where the money is. Anti-dumping and countervailing duty is. There's big money. But check it out, guys. There's an intersection between ADCVD noncompliance and UFLPA and transshipment and misclassification and misdescription of country of origin. And let's throw in undervaluation just for kicks. You know what I mean? All these things are going to come to a head, and CBP can look at a company and be like, okay, this company, if we take our time to audit or investigate them, we can hit them on UFLPA, help them become more compliant. We can, recover any unpaid anti-dumping and countervailing duties. We can make sure their values are correct. They're probably misclassifying stuff, and they definitely are misdescribing um, um, country of origin.
Mhm.
I will tell you, a lot of companies in the United States, they don't know. They don't have the tools, and I'm not out here as a proponent of any one software company, right? I'm here just tell I'm a proponent of software,
Mhm.
and I'm telling companies out there that you cannot do this without software. You can't have the visibility to see if your tier one vendor is transshipping goods from China to, let's say, Malaysia, and then slapping a made in Malaysia label and then shipping it to you as made in Malaysia. And all of a sudden, customs is auditing you, and you're just like, yeah, it came direct from Malaysia. It's like, yeah, but before that, it came direct from China. And so it's really important that people understand that you need to have your house in order. Okay. Don't just now put all of your eggs in the UFLPA basket. You need to have your holistic house in order. And it starts with tariff classification, and it starts with valuation and country of origin. You need to, if you think you're in an industry that's not ADCVD high risk, think again, because you just never know. And I know you guys have data sets for that as well, and to look at flags for ADCVD as well. So this is really important that I think trade compliance is going to evolve in leaps and bounds over the next 5 to 10 years because of section duties, because of the China trade war, because of UFLPA.
So better to get ahead of the game now, get your ducks in a row, and then you'll be prepared for the future.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. And as you said, we have the ADCVD flags, and we've actually, Tim and I have spent a lot of time looking at that intersection between ADCVD and forced labor, and where those intersections are, and then bringing in even tariffs as well. So kind of looking at where things are kind of the trifecta of people are going to be looking at you. So yeah, that's great. Um, and then just in terms of, like you said, how can the collaboration between industry stakeholders and government agencies facilitate a more effective approach to combating forced labor and supply chains? So what can we do? That collaboration do to help this situation?
I mean, get involved. You have to get involved. You can't just, whine and moan and be upset that you're now required to do all this, and you have one additional thing to do in your daily, responsibilities. When CBP, and I was there for 12 years. I was there when new free trade agreements came online, and we had to figure out how to audit them. You know, even within the agency, you're not born with a customs chip in your head, is what I tell people. You have to, even auditors and enforcement officials at customs now, they're evolving in their enforcement approach to UFLPA, but they don't know how their enforcement approach to UFLPA is affecting stakeholders unless we tell them. And unless we tell them in a constructive way. Blasting CBP is not going to do, anyone any good. So get involved with your industry associations. I know the American Association of Exporters and Importers, and I hope you don't mind me plugging them, but I'm involved with them, and they're very active in communicating to the government, various parts of the government, how the government's actions affect industry. Okay. And so I'm on a task force for forced labor through AAEI, and many other great people are. Talk to people at COAC, which is the Customs Commercial Operations Advisory Committee. So, talk to the people at COAC, apply to be on COAC, get involved. I know they definitely look for industry people. So if you're working at a major company that is affected by UFLPA, apply to be on COAC and make your comments and your voice heard. Um, I know CBP is definitely using AI, and they're definitely using software. In fact, that was one of the questions I asked during the trade summit as well in Philadelphia. And all I could get out of them is that AI is being used in an enforcement context for anomaly detection. And I quote, anomaly detection.
Mhm.
I don't know. I'm gonna be a good girl and keep my own comments on that to myself. But but AI, CBP has it.
Yep.
CBP has software. They're looking at your supply chains using software. They know who are the different companies within your supply chain and which ones are risky and which ones are identified in the Sheffield Hallam report. And and a lot of you are going to complain about it being too expensive, and I would say Byte is on the more affordable range of things. I will also say, and if you don't mind me plugging, Sheffield Hallam started the supply trace software, which is an open access free open access tool. In fact, there's a webinar on that later today. um, does it have all the bells and whistles a paid, SaaS service is going to have? Probably not. Nothing free is ever going to be as probably as robust as something that you pay for. But maybe you start there to understand the tool. I also like the fact that you guys have a monthly subscription, so there isn't this like massive commitment. I just think people need to understand the power of data and the power of AI and the fact that you can't do it without that. So like I said, communicate, help customs understand, um, attend industry conferences,
Mhm.
meet with people, benchmark with other people, and you're still in your same um, responsibility. Um, Directorate. So if you're a director of trade compliance and you're responsible for UFLPA, or if you're a director of supply chain, you're responsible for UFLPA, you might look at these things differently. So get involved, get involved, get involved is all I can say.
Yeah, that's great. Good advice. And yeah, like you said, Byte is affordable. We want to help everyone get access. Like you're saying, if CBP has access to this information, they will probably assume that you have access to the information, right? If they can find it, they would think you can. So trying to get this out, get everyone on, get everyone looking for their supply chain actors and searching it that way.
Yeah, and understanding that software, they're not all the same. It's not like I'm going to buy this computer versus that computer, and they're all going to help me, do my day job.
Yep.
One software does a completely different thing. You guys do something different than others. I'm not going to mention any others right now, but they do completely different things. And so a lot of people are struggling with that, is understanding what software do I need? At what level do I need it? And
Mhm.
I actually am going to do a webinar on this myself, a Deli on Trade webinar. Just like I probably can't use the for dummies trademark, but it's going to be
101, right?
yeah, it's going to be like actually, I don't even want it to be a 101. I want it to be like a 100 level,
Yeah.
like really, like very, very basic. So if you have any experience in this, don't come. You're going to be disappointed. It's like if you just really are completely confused about what software can do and what is AI and what is machine learning and what is federated machine learning and what are some of these different companies doing.
Mhm.
I'm going to do a webinar on that coming up soon. So I think people will be interested in understanding some of those basic topics.
Definitely. I think, as I said at the beginning, I love, your just desire to educate the industry. It's, really great and I think so helpful and so needed in the industry.
Thank you.
Um, So, do you have any closing thoughts for us, Cindy? Anything we didn't cover that you want to get out there, let our listeners in on?
No, I think I really appreciate the invitation. I will shamelessly plug the Advanced Topics in Customs Compliance Conference, and you'll see Bite there next February 2025 in Houston. We'll have over 500 people there. Just really, and it is an advanced conference. So if you are very new to the industry, it's probably going to be too much too soon. I would say you need at least 5 to 10 years in the industry before you can really take advantage of some of these expert speakers and topics, because the instructions I give them is don't cover the basics. Go right into the thick of it. This is like you're going into an accounting 300 level class. You
Mhm.
should have already done principles 1 and 2. You should have already done some of these basic accounting classes. So that's the whole point of it. And we're going to continue to, work with all you guys in software and just try to help the software industry evolve. Because my gosh,
Yeah.
if you looked at any of these software companies 2 years ago to what they are now, I can't think of anyone who hasn't evolved such a great deal in a positive way. So if you think you knew what a software company was 2 years ago, um, revisit them, because they're probably something bigger, better, and faster now.
Yeah,
So
definitely. For sure, I agree. And yes, not a shameless plug. We loved advanced topics, so we'll
thank you.
plug it too and get it out there. And yeah, that wraps up another episode of the Bite Pod. So I hope everyone enjoyed exploring the forced labor and UFLPA topics with us today and hearing from Cindy. And, I know Cindy has a great website, so check it out. And Bite is also on social media, Instagram, LinkedIn. So if you're interested of a demo of the platform, you can reach out to me or visit bitedata.io, or send us an email, and we offer free trials of the app as well. So, Cindy, thanks again,
My
and
pleasure.
I'm sure we'll be talking soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Take care.